Okay, so I promised you something about game mechanics. Let me get a share screen going here. So, game mechanics. These are not people who fix your broken game, and they don't have a lot to do with the kind of nuts and bolts things of implementing games. A game mechanic refers to the designed game player relationship that defines the game's challenges. These are the player's actions, their motivations, their goals, various feedbacks that we'll talk about, and rules. They're more than just actions, they're things that we want to do. And for what it's worth, this is based on a chapter in Holistic Game Development with Unity by Penny DeBly. It's a book that's now out of date. It was for Unity 3, I believe. So games are repetitious. A game is often a loop, a repeat until exhausted loop where a challenge is presented, the player does something, the state of the game changes, the state of the game is assessed, win or lose, gain points, lose points, and the player either succeeds or fails at that challenge. And so this repeat loop goes on and on and on. We can, if we're coding this, we have a do while loop, an infinite loop, where the challenge is presented. Within this do while true loop, we've got to repeat until the player succeeds, where they take the action, the state changes, the state's assessed, and so forth. And I'm sure you've encountered this kind of game in your play. Each encounter with an enemy is kind of this little challenge, and they fight the enemy until they either kill it or it kills them, and then we go on to another challenge. In the larger game mechanics, sort of the big picture of the game, we can break that larger game mechanic down into smaller mechanics that see our player repeating essentially the same tasks. You have to clear a level, or if you have to find the treasure or something like that. And each smaller mechanic is kind of a mini game in itself, but of course not something that you play for days. So we want to talk about what it is that does make us want to play a game for many, many hours. And part of what draws us to the video games is that video games tap into our natural abilities, talents that we as humans on the planet have developed as survival skills. One of these skills is pattern recognition. We seek out patterns in the world and recognize these patterns. And this allows us or helps us to make decisions where we have incomplete information. We don't know the whole story. We just have kind of partial information. And we can make decisions on that based on our recognition of the patterns. Sometimes this is called intuition. And various brain scientists have said that our brains actually reward us with a jolt of our happy chemical, dopamine, when we make sense out of chaos, when we organize things. So what makes games fun is that they engage the human mind by presenting it with challenges that it's designed to achieve. There's a book, A Theory of Fun for Game Design, that goes into a lot more detail on this. So this repetition and pattern matching, these are things that we're designed for. Now, another primary mechanic is searching. Searching is a basic human process, cognitive process, that involves our perception of an environment and our scanning of an environment, looking for something. Um, we kind of take mental snapshots of the world, scanning for items that match our internal representation of what it is that we're looking for. We don't have uh, a gold coin in our hands. We have a mental picture of a gold coin, and we're scanning the world for gold coins. Sometimes we need to remember where it was, since we either didn't need it when we saw it or we weren't permitted to take it. Sometimes we'll see a key, but it's not something we can pick up. Later we see a door that's the same color as the key, and this triggers the idea that we need to go back and find the key that had the color that matched the door. And this brings us to the next primary mechanic, matching. And matching is part of searching. It's identifying one object to be the same as or similar to another object. And as I mentioned in searching, that other object is our mental image of the object. So in the game, we sometimes put things together because they're parts of a whole, or they have similar color, like the key in the door, or they have some kind of shape that matches, or they have some kind of characteristic that matches. A key and a door kind of go together. Another mechanic is sorting, the process of making order out of chaos, getting things organized. And once we have things sorted, it makes life easier. It removes some of the cognitive load of dealing with the environment and performing tasks. It can be sorting things by size or by color or by species, age, name, or even having tasks that have to be performed in a particular order. You have to find the key to open the door. The door is a task that leads you to another level. Another primary mechanic is chancing. Chancing is the reliance on random, or in the case of computers, pseudo-random events. Lots of games involve dice, spinners, drawing cards, and in computers, random number generators. We have a class of random number generators in Unity, all for the purpose of sorting, selecting, or dividing. We use chance to make decisions within the game, and those decisions, often whether we live or die, are called risk. We can have competition among individuals. Two players joust, and the winner is decided in some cases by chance, a random number. In games, chance determines the probability of some future outcome, so there's a risk involved. We don't know ahead of time how it will turn out when we approach this thing. The greater the risk, the higher the neurochemical reward. Look up gambling addiction. Another mechanic is mixing. Mixing involves combining actions or objects to achieve some goal that's otherwise impossible. A number of you have presented me with games that involve jumping from one platform to another, and you have to combine two actions to jump across the gap. You have to simultaneously run and then jump to clear the gap between your platforms. It can also be putting together parts of an object that are found, of course, by searching and matching, putting them together to create some new object that solves a task. Putting together the key in the door opens a passageway to a new level. Timing is another fundamental mechanic. We all run on time. In a game, we can have a time limit on how long a task can take to be completed. We can time a task and award a score based on how much time it takes. Or you can even force a player to wait out some amount of time for something to occur. This last thing builds anticipation, and it forces a player to be patient. Probably one of the most compelling mechanics is progressing. This progressing is central to our human condition. We grow up, we graduate from school, high school, we hopefully graduate from college. At some point we get a job, and at some point maybe we're promoted. So in life, we progress. And in games, we start off as beginners, and as play progresses, we become more proficient in the game, we become experts, and the game can, and this grants the players a feeling of achievement that makes them want to keep playing. Often, this kind of progress involves some kind of reward system. As players play longer, their powers expand, they gain new capabilities. And you can also see this as progressing through various levels of a game, various different scenes or stages of the game narrative. And they may get progressively more difficult, but our player has become more proficient and has perhaps gained extended capabilities or powers. Capturing and conquering. Capturing is taking something that belongs to somebody else. In many games, this is the primary mechanic. The whole point is to capture enough points to win or to defeat enough enemies to clear a level. It's about outdoing or destroying. But victory may be just that you get something, you get a big house in your game or access to a car, or even just getting your initials on the high score list. These are all conquering things. Getting your initials high up on the high score list, of course, means you're better than anyone else. In games, we have the mechanic of avoidance, where we have to stay away from something, something that's harmful to us. We as humans have learned not to eat certain bright colored mushrooms. Early on, we learned not to touch the hot stove, not to touch the fire. In the game, the player avoids items and situations that harm their character. But in a game design, instead of telling them that what they can and can't do, one can penalize them for doing something that they will then learn to avoid. So you remove points or health when they step on the mine and penalize them. This avoidance places constraints on the player action. Once they've learned that they can't step off the path, that then diminishes their health, they'll stay on the path and you can then lead them around in the game. So it places constraints on the player. I've kind of already talked about collecting. Collecting is natural to human behavior, but it only works as long as there's a purpose for collecting. And this, of course, goes along with the whole searching mechanic. Sometimes we collect items because they give us points. Other times we collect items because we'll need them in the future, health potions that later you'll use to revive your character after the fight with the big boss. All of these are collecting mechanics. Now, no game is based on just one mechanic. If you've got a matching game where you match them by color, that's not really a game. But if you've got some amount of time in which to match as many as you can, there's a challenge, a goal, and a reward. And so there's a point to the game.